All right, I'm going to start this off with a story. It's a true story. It's about three men. They had the opportunity to buy a Model T parts car, a real Model T parts car. Neither one of the three could buy it outright themselves, so they bought it. And at one point, they could actually sell it and make some profit, but they decided to hold on to it. Well, the years of storage, they passed it between each other. Then they went into the negative numbers. It was costing them more to store it than it was ever going to be worth. And the one guy kept begging the other two to let him have it. And he was promising to pay them off in payments, which he never did. Well, the whole thing became a giant fiasco. Now, the other thing is my buddy is into model trains. And everybody basically has a set in their cellar in a box in a puddle of water. Now there are people that had sets of trains that are kept really well, mint in the box. Those are what the collectors want. Now, with the advent of the internet and the demise of older people that are dying off and dumping these trains onto the market, they're so common it's ridiculous. Okay, if you think about it, every guy basically had a set of trains, almost every. So there are really a lot of trains around, and the age group that really wants trains is gotten a lot smaller. Okay, so if you go and look at the York Train Show and look at the walkthrough of the different rooms, I think it's an orange room or whatever, you can see how great a shape these trains are in that are for sale and how many they actually have. So my buddy has switched over to standard gauge, which was one of the early Lionel trains called pre-war. There's less of those around because when they came out, they were very expensive. So to find one of those that's in mint condition is really something. So those have really kept their price because they're basically a collectible antique. There's only so many of those were made. Where the trains that were made for us kids in the 50s, they're garbage. All right? You might have gave yours to your cousin, and now you want the same set again. It's a nostalgia thing. You're paying a nostalgia tax to get the train back. But the train you're getting is not as rare as you think it is. It's only rare to you. Now, let's get to this transmitter. Same crap applies to this piece of crap. Now, there are all kinds of comments on the internet that this oscillator in this thing is really something special. It's within 10 hertz. It's not. It's within 100 hertz. Okay? So there are people going around the internet telling you how great this oscillator is in this thing, and it's got the magic eye tuning and all that. Well, basically, it wants 200 volts regulated in order to do that. So the power supply is going to be half the size of the radio. And I don't know if you saw my command receiver videos. I made a power supply that fit on the back of the radio so it wouldn't be so stupid. Okay, nothing worse than having two boxes to do something that you can actually do modern with a modern piece of equipment in the palm of your hand. And it's a nostalgia thing. It's nice working with tubes. I like working with tubes. It's interesting. But this project is terrible. It's been terrible right from the fact that I didn't realize that the roller inductor was missing on it. Even if I restore it, I'm missing that part. I'm not gonna be able to find that part without paying like $60. Now I've already bought the thing for like say 67 shipped to my house. The little Bristol wrenches, set of wrenches was $20. All right, a power supply for this thing, you're talking $75. Okay, just to make it a VFO. So I'm like looking at it now, I'm like, okay. And I put a lot of work into it. A lot of time, a lot of work. And it keeps me busy. But now I'm at the point where I know what an albatross looks like. And I want to say, this is the worst purchase I've ever made in my entire life. You're looking at it. This is it. I'd have to study and get a license. And then I'm having trouble with the code. And as an amateur or a novice, you could use this transmitter on code, okay? But like I said, $75 to make a power supply for it. How many people are really still on ham radio? But see, I like radios and anything electronic, so this seemed perfect, okay? And I looked real quick. It was a buy it now. I saw the window. Usually they got the window off the front when they steal the roller inductor. I didn't see it. I might have been looking at a different auction, and in my mind I saw a roller organ, and I bought this thing, and as soon as I got it, I'm like, this thing's got no roller inductor, and you're not going to be able to find that. Now I can kid myself and tell you, yeah, all I have to do is wait for dig up a roller inductor. It's not going to happen, and that roller inductor is going to be all, it's silver plated copper wire. It's going to be all messed up and aged. The copper is going to oxidize, and you got to clean that all up and put it in there, and then you got to build a $75 power supply, you know. But I did run it, and I did get the power supply running here. This guy. Oh, and this turned out to be this transformer here is only 100 milliamps. So this thing equals my design. It's no better. Can't use this to run the transmitter. Only to run the oscillator in it. This 300 something volts. But when it comes to this thing, you got to make a 200 volt supply. And if it's more than 200, it drifts one way. And if it's lower, it drifts the other way. That's what the guy says, you know. But in other words, the reason it has so low drift is it is designed pretty good for back in the day, and then you got to come up with a regulated power supply for it, and then but you can't use it. You can't use that oscillator that doesn't drift unless you have the license to use a VFO. And as a novice, you can't do that. So in other words, this thing has like a very small window of people that could actually use it as is. And then the big thing is the hobby is dying really bad. Now a lot of people are like, oh, ham isn't dying. It's dying. Come on. Bunch of old men. Look at the pictures, you know, of the flame. Like I said, have you been to a flea market lately? You know, I went to them when I was in Jersey all the time, and it switched from ham radio over to computers, okay? And you would still find the ham guys, but the stuff would be mistreated. And then there were the real swanky dealers that only had to make a couple sales, and they'd make their day because they had all brand new stuff in a box. And I used to go to the ham flea markets, and I'd pick stuff up. And I'd work on it and get it working. Use it a couple days, and then I'd put it on eBay for sale. And that's what I was doing with it. And then everybody started switching. Instead of taking the stuff to the ham flea market, you start hearing them talking about eBay. And it changed. Everything changes. But this is, without a doubt, the worst thing I've ever bought. Now, when you look at this thing, these capacitors, these tuning capacitors, they're good for up to like 800 volts. Okay, there's people that ran these things at 800 volts. And then you get the tube sockets, capacitors. Oh, you get the coils, and you get a sort of a chassis. Okay, that's what you're doing. You're buying something that's half built, and then you're adding to it, and now you have a transmitter. Where if you probably took less money, you could have bought the whole thing as a whole, not as a collectible, as just a working transmitter. But if you want tubes, you're going to pay a nostalgia tax. And even a Magic Eye tube. These things go from anywhere from $24 to $49. I was having trouble getting this working. Got it all working. It's not worth it. Okay? And I'm like, what did I do? But it's not that bad compared to the Model T chassis that those guys passed around. And there's a lot of stories I could tell you that, you know, I did the wiring on like old cars for people that they were restoring them. They'd buy the wiring harness, and then they weren't sure, and I'd ring it all out. And I had this one guy 3 times. I put the wiring harness on a car, and 3 times he did something, took it for a ride to test it, and melted the wiring harness around the engine. 3 times. I can give you some really stories about people, but I'm not gonna. There's some of them are still alive, but it was a nightmare. Okay, and they spent thousands of dollars into these boats. You know, they were like a boat. The big hole in the ocean. You pour lots of money in it. This is a miniature version of that. You know, little annoying things like this relay has to be energized in order for the rest of the thing to get its voltage. So you stick a piece of cardboard in there, but it's very quirky. And now you might like that. I had it. In this thing. This thing was all. It was all jammed up, gummed up. I had to take this apart, and then it was a bent shaft I had to do. And if I had gotten this thing in really good shape, I would have realized right away that the oscillator isn't 10 cycles. It's 100. It's within 100 cycles, and you can do better than that with a FET transistor. I was looking for something down the road to make something special. I like to have certain kinds of test equipment and that, but it's some of it's a dream, some of it's a direction I'm working in, but I run out of things that I really want to work on, and I was looking for something, and what better to do is to buy a matching transformer for my receivers. Okay, well, you don't realize that when it's in an airplane, it gets the voltage through the back connector, and then somewhere there's this big ugly box that's sitting there. So if you watch the video, this one guy that has pretty thorough videos, he's holding the thing in his hand and he's telling you about it, but he's not telling you the truth, okay? Or in my case, it's the truth that I would tell after I actually own one. I'm telling you, there's a big difference between the hype of something when you see it and when you actually own it. When you own it, the reality sets in. I did a quick one on a midlife crisis. Well, this is basically the same sort of thing. You have the excitement of life, and then it switches for you. Now you have the excitement of buying this thing. I can do this with it. I can do that with it. I can work on it. I can calibrate it. And then you get it, and it's not in good shape. It needs a part that's going to be $60 to buy another one, and possibly that part won't be any good, or a little tiny part will be missing from that. And reality bites. There's a movie, Bridget Fonda? Yeah, I'll say Bridget Fonda. Reality Bites. One of my favorite titles. Reality Bites. But this is reality, and it bit me. And it doesn't take much room. It isn't like this is a giant boat anchor. And I got a new bottom plate that's in good shape that he threw on this thing. So this is all pieced together of different pieces he had. Now that's very common with the trains, with cars. They'll throw you a box of something in there. Even with a car. I don't know if you've been with someone when they bought an old car, and they have boxes of stuff, and they're sweetening the pot, as you say, with boxes of stuff that doesn't work. And then you actually bring all this stuff home. You start sorting it out, and you're all excited. And then you start tearing the car down, and then you realize the chassis of the car needs a lot of welding. And the reality starts where you got to get someone that can really weld it correctly, and that's not going to be cheap. And then the car just sits there, and the wife gets all upset. Maybe a divorce. I've seen stuff that it boggles their mind. A person, I won't mention the type of car, but it's sitting in his backyard for 25 years now, and he's going to get to it. He's going to be dead soon. He doesn't realize that, but they're going to tow that out of the backyard, and it's going to go to a junkyard because it's been sitting out rotting in the backyard. See, a lot of people have a car, and in their mind, it's not as rusted as it really is. They actually see the thing as like almost ready to drive on the road. And then when the reality sets in, new set of brakes. Well, the brake lines are no good, and the pistons for the brakes, because back in the old days, they used these brake pistons. And you go back, I got to get that changed. And all this stuff is getting harder and harder to find and more expensive. And they're very smart, the people who sell stuff. They know just what you're going to need to restore something. You remember Mr. Haney on Green Acres? He always just happened to have what Mr. Douglas needed. And it was always a piece of shit. And Mr. Douglas would buy it. Not only did he buy the thing to bail something else out. Now he's off on a tangent trying to fix what he bought. And that's basically what a lot of hobbies are like. And I've been really lucky that I go cheap on everything, okay? You know, the Simpson 260s I bought 3 meters and made 2. And one went right out in the garbage. I didn't keep it for extra part. There are millions of those things out there, and they're overpriced, okay? That's because they know people want them, so everybody sort of gets together and raises the price up on eBay. Very rarely you'll get a buy it now from someone that doesn't know what they're selling, and then you click on it and you get the meter, and it has a set of batteries that have leaked all through the meter. So now you spend 2 or 3 hours taking it apart, cleaning the battery acid, restoring stuff. So basically, you could have bought a brand new one at that point. You know, I've gone through this, and it seemed nice to have the same meter I had in tech school and some of the jobs I worked on. And I didn't realize the overshoot on the meter made me nuts. Okay, but I did use it yesterday for measuring signal. You can actually measure signal with a Simpson. It's got low enough scales on it, where my other meters don't go that low. See, you really don't need some of those scales anymore. It's only for like older tube stuff, and the Simpson worked on it. But I just want to show you, this is the last one on this thing. I am not building a $75 supply to power an oscillator that drifts 100 cycles an hour, whatever it is, okay? This thing's not worth it. And these capacitors look very familiar, and I got a feeling these are the ones that Herman wanted $100 for at the electronic barn. He had these sitting in a case, and they were big like this one here, and you know right away it's because it works with high voltage. It's not a capacitor off of a regular AA5 radio or that. It's meant to go much higher, you know, double the voltage of regular ones. So the capacitor has to be big enough to give you the capacitance you want, and the plates have to be further apart, and the dielectric of the plates is there. So if you could make these capacitors, these I think they're like 50 picofarad. You can make these things the size of your thumbnail, but they won't work at 800 volts. The voltage will jump across them. And it's interesting, the RF voltage, I should say. Yeah, it's amazing stuff, but like I said, I rebuilt the flower pot. You know, it kept me busy, but this is the biggest hunk of junk I've ever bought. Now, someone will probably say, well, will you sell it to me? No, to box this thing up and to get it to the post office isn't worth my time. You know, I bought this to keep myself busy. Little did I know the whole thing would be all gummed up. And it's the worst. Yeah, this is the worst transmitter radio I've ever bought as far as condition. You know, the guy touched the chassis of the case up with some paint. It's pretty good. It's a Mr. Haney. We'll call this one the Mr. Haney transmitter. You know, it's funny stuff. Kept me busy for a few days. Oh, and I in between I was cleaning the house. I'm almost done cleaning the house. Now what do I do? And I want to tell you a quick story. Every year we get a lot of kids here for Halloween. I mean a lot. So you're talking $60 worth of candy. So I bought $60 worth of candy. Well, it was going to rain really bad last night, and the town just decided not to switch the day. So we did have kids. We had kids. Let's see. So I had $10 worth of kids came here, and I was giving them 2 Kit Kats each, trying to get rid of them. And now I got all these Kit Kats, and I've been little by little losing weight over the last couple of years, trying to get my weight down. Now I got, let's say $50 worth of Kit Kat bars in the house. Now that's going to work out real well. But yeah, a lot of crap's happening at the same time. You know, you got the COVID, you got the nostalgia tax on most of the stuff on eBay, and that's what it comes down to. Even for electronic parts, I find myself on eBay. These other companies, I won't mention their name, they're ridiculous with their prices. And then when you buy it, it comes from them through eBay. They're selling on eBay under different names, and I've gotten Jameco transformer through eBay for less money than on the Jameco website. And that's the annoying thing. You know, well, Jameco say, well, people that don't know about eBay will buy from them and they'll make money. Where if they want to stay in business, they have to sell on eBay. And I was using these strippers I bought, and eh, eh, nothing like a real pair of strippers made in the old days. You know, you barely squeeze into the insulation and pull, and the insulation come off. These you got to really dig in. They're dull, brand new. They're dull, but it's sad. And you know, I have a lot of disappointing things have happened in the last couple of weeks. But one good thing that did happen was my buddy drove all the way up from Florida. He did the York train show, and then he came over here. Instead of us having a real quick burger or something, him shooting on the highway, he stayed at a local hotel. But so that the day he come up, perfect weather. We hung out for about 6 hours. We drove around the Lancaster area, and Sunday everything's closed. But he got to see areas he hadn't seen before. We stopped at the train museum. There were newer trains outside we looked at, and then we visited a house that he's going to rent out here. It's a Airbnb. It's a friend of mine, and it's got a waterfall. We walked there, and he has trouble walking. He's got problems with his one foot. He had a knee replaced, and if I stand too long, my feet swell. It's old age. The two old guys walking along, but we were both happy to see each other. He grew up across the street from me in North Arlington. He was like an older brother to me, and he's still alive, and everybody else is gone now. But that's why, you know, another thing, psychologically, I try to stay busy because I'm at that age where the longer you live, the more people you see die, and it's sad. And it's sad how much money they're getting for one of these things. And it's such a piece of junk. But you know what? I'm looking at how many people are following this, and it's very few. Okay, so luckily nobody's getting sucked into this anymore. Ham radio is really dead. You put your radio on at night, and if there's no contest, it's really quiet. And there's a group of old men that are on sideband, and I listen to them, and it's all bragging, you know, or maybe they plan a trip together. Once in a while I listen to it. I'm like, man, you know, I don't want to be like that at my age. And I try to stay busy and come up with new ideas. But you know, I've dabbled in almost everything electronic. You know, so many computers and computer boards and doing YouTube videos. And you know, there's just I won't say electronics is limited, but it's limited to what you enjoy. And that's why so many people start a project and don't finish it, because the fun goes right out of it after a few minutes. You know, once you get it, you're all excited, you turn on it, and then the work starts. You got to come up with a program, or hack a program, or learn how to program. So, you know, and then you got the guys collecting old television sets. And when they die, that dumpster is going to be really expensive. Okay? They don't realize that's all that stuff you're not really supposed to put in the landfill anymore. So whoever gets stuck with those old TVs and radios and all that stuff, that's going to be really expensive to get rid of it. And the amount of people that want that stuff are dying off. Okay? And there's going to be more and more of this stuff on eBay. And these things are not rare. Thousands and thousands and thousands after World War II were put on the surplus market. And the ones that aren't drilled out and mint in the box, again, just like the trains, mint in the box, $1,400 for this. That's what they're listed at. Okay? Now, I don't know anybody, maybe they have so much money they could buy a piece of crap like this for $1,400, but I can't believe it. And then it messes me up to get the spare parts. And then even if you get the spare parts, you got to build a power supply for $75, if it's even that cheap. And because all the parts in the transmitter are now considered nostalgic, okay? So everything you got to get together and actually do it, and then you power it up, and it's not even a great transmitter. And then, it needs 3 different voltages in order to operate as a good transmitter, okay? I think that's it. You know, I warn you, but you know, there's going to be someone that watches this video that's going to buy one of these, and then they're not going to be able to work on it. You go look at those videos, what I had to do when this thing wasn't right. you know, get it calibrated, and the whole thing. It's not worth it. But it kept me busy, and housework actually kept me busy. And I have to, one of these days when the ground dries out again, I got to go out and chop up leaves. And my gutters, before the rainstorm, I went out there with the tool and to clean the gutters, and the gutters were packed from one end to the other with leaves. And I had just done it a week before. But the leaves are coming down wacky. They started coming down a month ago, and they're still coming down. And it's because we're not getting a really cold day to get the leaves to drop. It's been cool every morning. Okay, so the leaves are dropping because the days are getting shorter. They're not dropping because it's getting colder. So it prolongs the agony of playing with those stupid things. But what I do is I have an attachment I hook on the cheap lawnmower, and I run them over and chop them up. Because if you bag them up and put them out, you have to pay like $5 a bag, or it's so ridiculous here. Okay, that's one of the expensive things. Living in Pennsylvania is trying to get rid of your garbage, and I bet it is everywhere else. I think that's it. All right, that's it.